Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Luna of the Lost Moon. Episode 8. Chapter 118. Lola's POV. Nathan, I called out to him through our mind link. Yes, Luna, he responded almost immediately. Meet me at the house in 20 minutes, then I blocked off our mind link. Adrian looked at me in question. Don't look at me like that. Action needs to be taken against this. I've allowed this to go on for too long. I can't sit back and watch him tear through my pack anymore, I told him before sitting beside Rose again. She had moved back from Adrian and was now resting her head on my shoulder while I rubbed her arms. What are you going to do? She asked while yawning, and I shook my head. I don't know, I really don't know, I whispered back. We'll also do whatever we can to help, Avianca said from where she was sitting. I looked towards them with a grateful smile, even though I know I wasn't going to put them in harm's way like that. Rose kept yawning, so I offered to help her to bed. She argued at first that she did not need any help, but I insisted and she finally gave in. She said she did not want to sleep in her former room, so I took her into my room since I barely stayed there and it would be easier for me to check up on her. While she took a shower, I arranged the room and cleared out the bed. I remembered that there was a time I got scented candles from the mall when I went shopping with Lila, so I got the jasmine scented ones and lighted it for her so that he can sleep well. She took her time in the bathroom and I knew she had been crying but said nothing about it. I knew how I felt when I got rejected by Grayson, how I felt when Adrian constantly broke my heart, and I was sure it was nothing compared to losing a mate, the one you're supposed to spend the rest of your life with. It smells so amazing in here, I love it, she said with a forced smile as she entered the room again. I lighted some candles for you, anything for my favorite person in the world. Do not tell Adrian I said that, I said, and she laughed slightly, which warmed my heart. I passed her the clothes I picked out for her and waited till she was done before I turned to face her again. She laid down and I made to leave, but I held my hands. I want you to stay till I sleep off, Lola, she said, and I nodded my head. I lost my Anna to a rogue attack, also, she whispered. Adrian told me. I'm so sorry that had to happen, I said, but she shook her head with a smile. No, you weren't the cause of the rogue attack, and so, you shouldn't be sorry for what you did not do. But, they wanted the moon wolf, Adrian told me everything. I'm so sorry, Rose. If I had not been born, you'd still have your daughter with you, I said sadly. She'd have her mate too. Oh, silly, she said with a weak smile, I might have lost Anna, but I got you as my second chance daughter, and if gladly go through the pain of losing a daughter again to find you. You're very amazing and strong that I sometimes envy how you could still stand despite having too much to carry on your shoulder. She slowly sat up and cradled my face in her hands. I'm so glad Adrian did right by you before it became too late. You're such a precious gem and I'm glad I took you in. She looked into my soul as she spoke and I couldn't help but be emotional. I'm glad you treated me like yours. I wouldn't have been able to survive without your help and backup. You were the mom I lost at a young age, and I'd be forever grateful to the moon goddess for the gift of you. At that point, she was crying again. I promise that I'd do whatever it takes to make sure that we get the revenge we deserve, Mom, I said. She looked shocked at being called that by me. Mom? She asked. Yes, Mom. You've played that role perfectly, I answered her with a huge smile on my face. She hugged me tightly and I felt her body shake with tears. Thank you so much, Pumpkin, she whispered, making me teary, but I kept my tears at bay. Now, you need to sleep. You've done enough, I told her as I pulled back, and she smiled as she nodded. She laid down and within minutes, her breath evened out. I gently kissed her forehead before I stepped out of the room. It wasn't until I left her room that I allowed my tears to fall. I held onto the wall to support myself as all the emotions I had kept in while I was with Rose broke free. Adrian came up the stairs and saw me crying. Without saying a word, he held me till I stopped crying. He did not say anything, nor did he try to stop me from crying, and I was grateful for that. The reality of everything just hit me with Jaden's death, and I was just grieving for him. Is Nathan here already? I asked after I stopped crying, and he nodded. That's why I came to get you, he responded. What do you plan to do? What are we going to do? He asked. I sighed before replying him. I don't know, Adrian. All I know is that we've allowed this to go on for long and it's time to put a stop to it. Let's start by fishing out the traitor, I said as I pulled away from him. We walked hand in hand down the stairs where Avianca, Lila, and Nathan were waiting for us. Nathan bowed slightly in respect when he saw me. So, here's what is going to happen. Lola's POV: it's been 2 months since we lost Jaden, which means it's been 2 months since we've been trying to figure out who the mole in the pack is while trying to figure out we could bring down Damon. Rogue attacks in the pack became rampant, and every time, he'd always leave a note behind. We increased the strength of security around the pack, but they still managed to get into the pack undetected. Serena did a spell on the pack that was supposed to keep intruders out, but they still managed to enter the pack. It was frustrating, and at some points, I almost gave up on the whole thing. Yes, I almost killed myself. In fact, I tried to, by injecting myself with wolfsbane, but Selene sent me back and said my time wasn't up. Adrian almost went on a rampage, and that was my wake-up call. When I was finally revived, I realized just how much damage I caused in a week. The pack was almost in ruins because Adrian neglected all of his duties even when the pack was attacked twice. Rose went into depression, and I felt very bad for causing so much trouble. After I fully recovered, Adrian was very obstinate about my decision to go back to training because he knew I'd be pushing myself harder than I normally would. Unknown to him, Selene already gave me advice on how to go about unlocking my powers. I guess my near-death experience was the reason for that. According to her, she was breaking some laws of the universe, but it was becoming unbearable for me, and I refused to live if I would keep going through the same thing over and over again. After a lot of conversation and deliberation, I was able to convince him, and I went back into training. Apart from being taught how to fight and practicing self-defense, Serena would come 3 times in a week to see how far I was doing with unlocking my powers and what other powers I had unlocked. So far, I have unlocked 2 more powers apart from being able to shoot lightning and healing people. I could create a force shield around myself, and I also learned how to use the weather to my advantage. Every time, Serena would say I had not reached my full potential, and I knew it too, but I knew how hard it was going to be to catch Damon if I didn't reach my full potential. Apparently, he needed me at my full power before he took me, but we needed to get him first before he ruined everything. Knowing that whatever the mole in the pack finds very useful will be relegated to Damon, we made an announcement that the war will be happening soon since all we needed had been put in place. Although we made it seem like it was a means to ginger the warriors, only Adrian and Serena knew the truth. Through it all, I kept working on myself while also growing with Adrian. We've gotten closer than before and I felt his emotions and thoughts like they were mine. Things were not like that till he broke down over the death of his father after holding it for too long. I made a pact to protect my mate and the pack from whatever might threaten their peace and safety. I had gotten stronger and faster on my legs too. When I first started physical training with others, it was hard for me because I was used to Jaden's way of training. These people held back because I was their Luna, making it difficult for me to be able to learn because they all treated me like a porcelain doll. I have also been working on extending my force field to a larger area. I wouldn't be the only one fighting during the war and I will need to protect my pack members too. Lola, a voice took me out of my thoughts and I almost made a force field to shield myself, nearly hurting a nervous-looking Lotina in the process. You scared me, Tana. I placed my hands over my chest trying to calm my racing heart. Are you okay? What scared you? Do you need me to come over? You know I don't like it when you're alone, especially in the woods. Adrian's voice rang in my head, bringing a smile to my face. He must have felt the change in my breathing. I'm fine, Pappy. I just got startled by Lotina showing up here. I promise that I'm fine, Adrian, I assured him. I noticed that Lotina was acting differently. I mean, she's been acting differently since Jaden's death, but today she looked sad and afraid. The Luna instinct in me wanted to shield her and protect her, but the friend she suddenly switched up on kept me rooted. Call me petty, I'll answer you prettily. Do you have a minute? She asked, still wringing her hands, and I nodded. Sure, what do you want to talk about? I asked her, cleaning the accumulated sweat on my forehead. She started, I've been meaning to talk to you about this for a while, but I did not know how to go about it because I f up royally, she said. Thank goddess you know. I won't say it's cool that you decided to switch up, but I'm sure we can move past that, I said to her, and she nodded. Can we move a bit farther? She gestured towards the guards that were in the distance. I gestured to her to lead the way and she led us deep into the woods, such that we were almost close to the border of the pack. I was getting uneasy with where we were, and that was when she stopped. What do you want to talk about, Lotina? I need to get back to my training before he starts getting worried. I almost snapped at her but kept my cool. Yeah, I'll make it as short as possible. I don't have all the time in the world either. Her tone changed, surprising me. What are you talking about? I snapped at her and she dared laugh. Geez, you're so dumb, don't you think? She looked me in the eye before laughing maniacally. What is going on, Lotina? Why are you doing this? I asked slowly. I contacted Adrian through our mind link and he said he was on his way immediately. I know your mate is on the way, so I'll make this as quick as possible. Before I could ask her what she meant, I felt something prick my neck and I slowly lost consciousness, not before I said one last thing to Adrian. I'm sorry and I love you. Adrian's POV. Her last words kept ringing in my head as I barked out orders to the warriors that came with me. I'm sorry and I love you. She was gone when I reached the pack border. The only evidence of her being there was the scrunchie I got for her that was on the ground. The warriors that were with her at that time were all dead by the time I got there. The only thing that was keeping me from going on a rampage was the fact that I could still feel the mate bond. Even though it was fainter than what I usually feel, it was there. Nathan came a while later, looking sad, and I knew what he was going to say before he said it. She's gone, man. We couldn't find her anywhere in the pack, he said. I howled loudly in sadness, and soon the whole pack was filled with howls of sadness. Their Luna had been kidnapped after all. When we got back to the pack house, everywhere was silent and the whole atmosphere was depressing. The last time the pack was like that was when we lost Dad. Even the children must have sensed that something was wrong because they were quiet, very quiet. She was loved by everyone, so it doesn't come as a surprise. In my head, Damon was surprisingly quiet, which made me worried. He's always saying something. Being silent when his mate was missing was getting me worried. Buddy, why are you so silent? I asked through our mind link, and all I got was a whimper. I was going crazy while maintaining a calm demeanor. Mate. I need mate, Damon was whimpering in my head, and I just couldn't imagine what he was feeling. Usually, the wolf side connects more than the human side does, so he must be feeling worse than I did, and I felt like I was being teared up from the inside. Tomorrow, we will send out a search party to every unclaimed land and every human town across the country. No stone should be left unturned, am I clear? I barked out my orders to Nathan and the warriors before leaving the silent pack house, Nathan following behind me. Are you okay, man? He asked me after we walked some distance, but I kept mute. I did not know how to respond to that without breaking down, so I kept mute and just kept walking. He got the memo because he did not ask anything after that, and we just went to my house. We met Lila, Avianca, and Mom in the living room. When we got there, they were comforting themselves. It was such a sad sight to see because Mom was having it worse than me. Lola had been her support since Dad passed. I never found out what happened when she took her to her room, but I knew that it made them impossibly closer. They were so close that she became depressed after Lola almost took her life, and she was just recovering from it. What happened now was surely going to make her revert back to being depressed, and I didn't know how to stop that. Lila, who was heavily pregnant, was crying out her eyes too. They talked non-stop about how they were going to raise her baby together, and I might have been a bit excited when I was told to be the godfather for the baby. Now, we might never see the baby because our only hope at bringing down the evil that was going to wipe us out was now gone. Nathan went to hug Lila tightly to his chest when he met her crying, and I felt a pang in my chest. I miss my mate. Mom looked up and broke down into tears again when she did not see Lola with us. She held on to Lila tightly. I couldn't take it, so I left the room and went to my study, signaling to Nathan to follow me. He knocked once before he entered the study, closing the door behind him. I need Jace and his mate here, he nodded and his eyes glazed over. They're on their way, he said after a while and sat in the chair in front of me. I nodded before drifting into my thoughts. Was she hurt before being kidnapped? How is she feeling right now? Will she be hurt when she finally sees that Damon guy? Does she miss me? Because I miss her so much. I could barely feel anything through our mate bond, it was like our connection was cut off by something. I wondered how she must have felt being betrayed by someone she trusted as a friend. Just then, Jace walked in followed by his mate Greg, who also happened to be Lotuna's sister. No one in the pack knew who kidnapped their Luna, they just knew that she was kidnapped. I looked at Greg intently, making him move closer to his mate and hide behind him. Outraged by the presence of Lotuna's relative, Damon growled and tried to take control of my body, but I tried as much as possible to rein him in. Nathan also stared the Greg pup down, which added to the intensity in the room. "You called for us, Alpha," Jace spoke up, breaking up the deafening silence in the room. "It's no news that your Luna got kidnapped today," I said, looking at Greg intently. "It's also not news to everyone that we have a mole in the pack that works for the rogues," I added, to which Jace nodded. "We're well aware of that, Alpha. Tomorrow, we're also going on a search for her. We promise to bring the Luna back to the pack in good health," he said, not losing his composure. "Concerning the mole, your mate here should know a thing or two," I said, and watched his reaction closely. He looked genuinely shocked and I did not know whether I should believe him or not. What do you mean, Alpha? I don't know anything about the traitor, I don't know what you're talking about." He was visibly shaking at this point. I couldn't pinpoint if it was out of fear of being caught or fear of me. "Your sister, Lotuna, is the traitor, and I'd like to know how you helped her achieve her goal of kidnapping your Luna," I said. "Lotuna did what? I don't believe you at all. I'm sure she's somewhere in the pack crying over Lola being kidnapped. They're very close friends, my sister would never do anything like that," he kept rambling on and on. I was about to speak up again when the desk phone in my office rang. "Alpha, Adrian of Crescent Moon Pack speaking," I said into the receiver. "I finally get to speak with you, Alpha." The condescending tone with which he said the Alpha sent a shudder through my spine, and I just knew who it was. Damon. That bastard. Adrian's POV. "Who's this?" I asked just to be sure. He laughed mockingly before answering. "Oh, Adrian. I'm so hurt by your words." I could imagine him with his hands on his chest, a very wide grin on his face as he spoke. He did not say anything afterwards, so I remained silent too, a breathing competition ongoing. "Who's that?" Adrian mouthed. "The bastard," I replied to him, and saw Nathan's eyes change colors before they returned back to his original color. Jace and Greg stood confused in the center of the room, looking from my face to Nathan's. Damon was impatient and wanted to take charge, but I knew that he was just trying to play mind games, so I did not relegate control to him. "Let me out. I'm going to kill him and bury him where no one is going to find him," Damon grinned out. "Let you out and then what? You're just going to ruin everything with your temper. He's trying to rile us up, so calm down." For the first time, I was being the reasonable one. "You're good," he said, but I still kept mute. "With your temper and reputation, I expected you to be tearing the whole world down right now on search of your mate," he snickered. "Oh, let me rephrase that." He went silent for a few seconds before speaking again. "I expected you to be tearing the whole world down in search of my mate," he laughed maniacally. My blood boiled and I couldn't help the loud growl that escaped my mouth. "Listen here, you deranged son of a gun. You will not touch a hair on my mate's body, not to talk of defiling her, I gritted out, clenching my fists together to prevent me from lashing out at someone in the room. I'm so scared, Alpha Adrian, he said mockingly. Good luck trying to find her. I'd be having fun with her beautiful body before I finally take you down, all of you. The line went silent after that. I redialed the number but I was unable to connect. In a fit of rage, I threw the phone across the room, barely missing Jace. I slumped onto my chair almost in tears. If only I had been faster. If only I had been wary about Lodena's sudden appearance. If only, just if I had been more careful, my mate would be by my side right now. I don't care how it's going to be done, I don't care how you're going to find her, but I want to see my mate in this pack by tomorrow, I barked out at everyone in the room. Jace and Greg nodded. I need every information on your sister before the day runs out. Where she's been in the past few months, anything and everything that relates to her and your family too. Failure to get me that in an hour will lead to your execution, I growled at Greg. They bowed before they made their way out of the room. I was left with Nathan in a chaotic mind. What if we never find her again? What if she gets marked by that psycho? Will I be able to hold my mate in my arms again? I was broken and felt useless also. I had built my support system around her, and now that she wasn't here, I was slowly falling apart. Deep down inside me, I knew it was a matter of time before I completely lost it. We're going to find her, man. She's Lila's best friend and I know she'll be heartbroken if nothing is done about it, Nathan assured me, and I hoped to the moon goddess that it would be possible. What of Mom and the girls? I asked him after a moment of silence. Rose is asleep now, Lila and Avianca are in the living room, he replied to me. I stood up and went to the sitting room. They should have some information regarding Lodena too, even though they fell out at some point. They were all together in the pack before Lola came into the pack. Any new developments? Lila stood up immediately she saw us, her face fell when Nathan shook his head. I was glad he did not tell her what happened in the study. I wasn't sure they would have been able to take it. Everyone knows who took her, but I doubt that they want to admit it. What information can you give me about Lodena? I asked them as I took a seat. Lodena? Avianca asked. We barely talk anymore, she just switched up on us after her coming of age and we've been distant since then. Yeah, she's right. We barely talk anymore. Why did you ask? Lila chipped in. I looked at Nathan, contemplating if I should tell them the truth or not. Nathan, what's going on? How did Lodena get thrown into the equation? Lila asked her mate with a stern face. She's the traitor, I said plainly, and they both gasped. Tha, that can't be true, Avianca stuttered. She can't do that. Lodena is not that kind of person, Lila said too. She looked towards Nathan, who nodded subtly. I was about to speak again when my phone vibrated. A message popped up saying, I hope you like what you see, with an image attached to it. I quickly opened the message and I almost dropped my phone in shock. It was an image of Lola tied up with no clothes on, she had nothing on her and her whole body was on display. Another message came in and I read it almost immediately. Isn't she so pretty? I can't wait for her to be awake so that I can have my way with her the way I want. I'm sure you'll want videos of your mate moaning my name in pleasure, the message read. That was when I lost it. I saw red and Daxon took over my body. He ran out of the house in a fit of rage and ran into the woods, destroying everything in his way. I could not reason anything beyond the image of my mate. I wanted to burn the world to the ground just to find her before he violated her. She was so innocent, she ran away from her old pack to avoid being defiled, and that bastard is trying to take advantage of her again. I was suddenly surrounded by wolves at the pack border. They were blocking my way and the anger in me tripled. I charged towards the wolves that were blocking my path, but I got hit by a needle halfway and fell to the ground, slowly losing consciousness. No, I need to get to Lola. I need to SA. The world became black around me. Lola's POV. I woke up confused, my head banging like 1001 stainless plates were being hit together inside of it. I tried to remember what happened, but my memory was fogged up and I felt dizzy. Jasmine! Jasmine! I shouted worriedly in my head when it was all silent and I could barely feel her presence in my head. Ugh! Do you not know when to be quiet, Lola? She asked irritatedly, and I breathed a sigh of relief. At least, she still has her sass. I don't know where we are and why. I can barely feel Adrian in my head and my bond with the pack is weakened also. What's going on? I asked her with the hope that she was going to remember what happened to us, but it was to no avail. I don't know what happened nor why. I just feel like I've been hit by a freight train, she replied, and it was obvious she was in a nasty mood. I made to turn a bit to be more comfortable with my hands tied when I felt coldness deep into my skin. Wait, what? My skin? I looked down. I started panicking and tried to get myself freed from the very uncomfortable position I was tied in. I heard footsteps coming towards where I was and stopped struggling for a while. The scent of the person was familiar, but I just couldn't place who exactly it was. The door opened and I had to close my eyes briefly when the light shone on my face, since the room I was placed in was very dark. Glad to see that you're awake, a female voice that I would recognize anywhere spoke up. Lola. She switched on the light in the room and I could see her holding a tray in her hands. You? I seated. Yes, me. She giggled in a very annoying voice and my rage surged despite the position that I was in. How could you, Lola? How could you do that to me? Why did you join cohorts with these losers? I asked angrily, my eyes filled with tears that are waiting to set free. She placed the tray she was holding on the floor somewhere and moved so close to me. I glared at her as she came closer. I was expecting her to say something, but she hit me across the face instead. I looked at her in shock and she smiled at me. Yes, that felt great, I've always wanted to do that. And you mentioned something about losers when you're the one that's tied up. Such a pathetic piece, she smiled evilly in my face, shocking me to the bone. Lola had always been the quiet one in the group, only talking when the need arises. I did not think that she would be the traitor at all. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? I asked her in shock. It was like a movie was playing and I couldn't fathom the whole thing. She laughed and did a little dance before picking a chair, and she sat down beside me, her legs crossed. One as your friend, I owe you some explanation, or maybe I just want to rub my victory in your face. You might want to get comfortable. Just kidding, you can't get comfortable, You're tied up, she laughed again before she started speaking. Well, I found my mate a day or two before you came into our pack even though it wasn't my coming of age yet. I guess the moon goddess just liked me that much, she grinned, but it wasn't a kind of grin Lola would give anyone before. It was dark and seemed evil. But we couldn't be together because your stupid egoistic mate doesn't like rogues and my darling mate was one of them. She looked sad before quickly masking it up. I'd go to the human town under the guise of hopping, but it was actually to see my mate. He'd tell me how they planned to take over the whole wolf world and it excited me. She clapped her hands excitedly. Who wants to be bound by pack rules forever? Not me. And your beloved mate and his father suck royally. She made a gagging sound and looked disgusted by the thought of Adrian and Jaden. How can you speak of the dead like that? Have you no shame? I snapped at her and she laughed. Oh, Lola. You seem to be forgetting that I am the one with the upper hand right now? I'll suggest you keep your mouth shut or there would be consequences, she warned before she continued her story. One day, he spoke about the moon wolf and guess who showed up in our pack the next day? You. She laughed manically. You came into our pack as a pathetic and weak piece. The first time I saw you was when Nathan brought you to the pack house. The description my mate gave me fitted you perfectly, so I decided to be friends with you. We became close and I would have changed my mind, but the moon goddess kept blessing you with everything, so I decided that I was going to F you over. She smiled at me and I was appalled. I never would have thought she would be the traitor. Then Faye caught me, she sighed tiredly. She went shopping also and saw me talking to my mate and then found out that he was a rogue. You know how she is, she decided to blackmail me about it. She was going to tattle to Adrian until I managed to convince her that you were going to be out of the picture and the stupid piece agreed. It was fun to see her think that she'd be the Luna. She doesn't even deserve to be human, she laughed like she'd gone crazy. And she deserves to be human? She's way worse than Faye, Jasmine said in my head, and I totally agreed with her. Lola had definitely lost it. Well, all I had to do was provide information about you, your whereabouts and all. Faye was supposed to lay low until you were finally out of the picture, but the piece had to F up and show up at your coronation. She rubbed her temples tiredly. She was supposed to be killed alongside your former alphas, but she turned out to be Damon's mate, so she was saved. I couldn't take you anymore, so I separated myself from you and your friends till you reached your full potential, and now we're here, she finished. I just looked at her blankly. I had no idea what to do or say. I was at a loss for words and I'd never felt betrayal this deep. She looked at me with a sick satisfaction on her face which made me sick to my stomach. She got up and passed the tray to me. Make sure you eat, Luna. You'll need the energy for what's about to come. With that she left the room, leaving me to my tears and thoughts. This definitely took a different turn than I expected. Lola's POV. I didn't know how much time passed because I was wallowing in self-pity. I thought I had people I could trust. I thought I was loved by my friends, only to find out that I was befriended by someone who wanted to see me fall. I did not touch the food, not like I could if I wanted to, because I felt like she would have poisoned it. My hands keep aching from being bound above my head for so long, but it was nothing compared to the ache in my heart. I missed Adrian and Rose and Lila and Avianca and Nathan and Dylan that barely spoke to me but makes me laugh anytime he does. I did not know I was crying until I felt droplets of water on my chest. I went to wipe it, but the pain in my arms mocked me. I started laughing loudly while also sobbing, the two moving perfectly with each other. Anyone who saw me would have thought I had gone crazy. I thought getting rejected by Grayson was painful, but I felt the betrayal from Lola more. We all laughed together. She was with me during my darkest times. We gave each other strength and energy to power through anything, but she turned out to be the one to stab me in the back. My mind drifted to Adrian and I wished I was back home in his arms while we talked about random things. I missed the little touches and random forehead kisses. I miss him too, Jasmine whimpered in my head. What would he be doing now? Is he fine? A lot ran through my head. The door opened again and I closed my eyes. The scent of the person that entered the room was different, and from the strong scent, I knew it was a man, but I did not have the strength to hide my body from him. I felt him come closer, but I did not open my eyes and laid there. Do you think we can hypnotize our way out of this situation? Jasmine asked in my head. Even if we get untied, we need to see that, we can't just escape like that. We need to be pitted for any of these to work, I told her. I'm about to whatever we planned, Lola, she hissed, and I blocked her out. So hot-headed. I know you're awake, love. Your uneven breathing gave that away, the voice said while running his hands down the side of my face. I sighed before opening my eyes. I sighed before finally opening my eyes. I was expecting to see a very ugly man, but was surprised that he looked very fine, not nearly as gorgeous as Adrian, but he was okay. He had blonde hair and hazel eyes with a scar running down his face. Look what you see, he asked, and I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. He roamed his eyes over my body and I felt disgusted with myself, but there was no way I could cover myself up. I felt like I was betraying Adrian by allowing another man to see me. I like what I see though, I'm sure we're going to have a good time together, he said in a very creepy way. I couldn't stop the retching sound that left my lips, and he looked at me with a smirk. He was obviously having so much fun at my discomfort. Don't worry, you're going to be begging for me soon, he said before giving me a pat on my cheeks. He stood up and walked around me, his eyes not leaving my body. He finally looked at my face and smirked at me. Forgive my manners, love, I should have introduced myself first, but your beauty blinded me. Jasmine made a retching sound in my head, but I kept my face neutral. I am Damon, the Rogue King. I've been sending you gifts for a while now, I hope you liked all of them. He asked with a big smile on my face, and if my hands were not tied, I'd have slapped him. I see you're not going to talk to me, I like my feisty women. I'd have had my way with you, but your pathetic mate needs to suffer before I share a video of us making love. He squatted in front of me again. He held my chin and made me look him in the eye. A single tear rolled down my cheeks at being defiled by this vile man. His hands felt like I was being pricked by 1,000 needles. Through our mate bond, I felt sadness radiating from Adrian, or I could have been wrong. Apart from the tears streaming down my face, I didn't show any emotions at all. I did not want to see how much he affected me. When he saw that I wasn't responding to him, he forcefully kissed me. I tried to free myself from him and kept moving my head sideways to escape his lips, but he did not relent. He forcefully held my neck and kissed me roughly, bruising my lips in the process. When he finally released me, I wanted to crawl out of my skin because I felt so disgusted and dirty with myself. I know how much it was going to hurt Adrian if he ever found out what happened. He stood up with a satisfying smirk on his lips and a mischievous glint in his eyes. I will make you feel so much better than this when you're finally mine, love. He looked at the wristwatch on his wrist and whistled. Duty calls. I'll be back for more later. He turned to go but stopped in his tracks again. I see that you haven't touched your food. He gestured towards the tray of food that was still on the floor where Lola left it. It's advisable you eat it because you'll need the energy for what's about to come. With that, he left the room, turning off the light on his way out. My tears started streaming down my face afresh after he left. I wish this would be over soon. I need my mate. Lola's POV. I didn't know I was asleep until I got jerked awake when a door slammed. I went to sit up quickly but I got pulled back by my hands that were still in their uncomfortable position. I got dragged back by the chain and hit my head on the floor, biting the insides of my cheeks to prevent any sounds of pain from escaping. The light was still off but I could make out two silhouettes in the dark, one of which belonged to Lola. The second silhouette looked vaguely familiar and just when I was about to conclude who it was, the light came on revealing who it was. Faye. She stood beside Lola and looked at me condescendingly. I looked at both of them and they actually looked like the perfect duo. Peaches deserve each other after all. Faye stepped forward looking all pretty and dolled up in pretty dresses. This status suits you perfectly well. A lowlife like you shouldn't be amongst important people anyway, she snickered but I just kept staring at her, not allowing myself to be intimidated by her. Her eyes twitched in anger and I just knew that she was about to lose it. When I did not answer her, she spoke again. Every disappointment is a blessing, don't you think, Lola? She asked Lola, who nodded before going back to picking at her nails. If I had been the queen of the wolves, I'd have ended up in this position. I'm glad I got rejected by Adrian and I found love here, she giggled and covered her face with her hands. You'll all be wiped out and I'll become the queen of wolves like I originally wanted, she said happily. I looked at her intently before I started laughing. I laughed hysterically until my stomach hurt. Lola and Faye looked at me in surprise but I did not stop laughing. I laughed so much that tears came out of my eyes. What are you laughing at, Peach? Faye asked, her voice angry and screechy. I said, what are you laughing at? Her voice went up an octave and her face was red. I managed to stop laughing and took a deep breath before speaking again. Faye, you're so dumb and naive when it comes to things like this. One would think a warrior like you would know these things. I looked her dead in the eyes before speaking again. Even if you F your way to being the Queen Luna, you'll not still have significance enough to be wanted like this, I smiled at her. I understood that I was being mean but if she goes low, I'll go lower. Being pushed around or looked down upon by someone who only covets my position is a no. What did you just say? She asked in a surprised tone. Keep up, Faye, I smirked at her. She looked at me with anger and hatred in her eyes and I gave her a glare with the same intensity. If I could take control right now, I'll show her just how much I hate her guts, Jasmine growled in my head. Do you not see it or you're just delusional because you're power hungry? I asked her, allowing the question to linger in the air before I spoke again. You're always the option, you were never the original plan," I told her. From the corner of my eyes, I saw Lola trying to hide her laughter behind her hands. Faye's left eye kept twitching and I knew it was due to being angry. I disregarded that and continued with what I was going to say anyways. "With Adrian, you were always the backup plan. He chose you in case he didn't find his mate, yet he kept looking for his true mate all around the globe even though you were already chosen to be his," I said. "Now, your mate wants me, which is why he kidnapped me. You're probably just a desire-satisfying tool and nothing more, and yet, you dare to compare us?" I asked, a mean look in my eyes. She moved close to me and gave me a slap that made my head hit the wall in the process. I felt the metallic taste of blood in my mouth, but I kept my smile on my face. She became more furious and tried to hit me again, but Lola held her hand. "What are you doing? Let me go, Lola," she struggled against Lola, who refused to let go of her hands. "You told me you just wanted to see her, why are you hitting her?" Lola asked her, but she kept struggling against her. "Damon is not going to go easy on you if he ever found out that you hit her," she shook her as she spoke. Faye calmed down and stepped back from me, still glaring at me. "Tell Damon that I'm ready to see him," I told Lola, and she looked at me like I had gone crazy. "Why do you want to see my mate?" Faye piped up. I rolled my eyes at her and sat up slowly, taking my chained arms into consideration. "That's between him and I, Faye. Lola, can you tell your alpha that I'd like to talk to him?" I faced Lola, purposely ignoring a fuming Faye. "What are you going to do when you see him?" Jasmine asked in my head. "It's time to start putting our plans into action," I replied to her. Just then, Damon entered as if he was summoned. Faye's body language changed and she became all sultry and nice. She smiled, pushed out her chest and went towards Damon. Damon pushed her to the side and walked towards me. "Oh, oopsies. I was right. Why are you here?" He directed his questions at Lola and Faye. "I only came to see a former friend, baby, it's not a big deal, I promise," she smiled, but he did not return it. He turned to me with a smile and I felt disgusted, but I managed to return it with one of my own. "I'm ready to be yours, Damon," I told him, which made his grin wider, "but on my own terms." Lola's POV, his smile faltered before he started speaking. "Sure, darling. I'm sure we can work out something while putting your terms into consideration." His smile returned to his face. Behind him, I heard a sharp intake of breath before Faye spoke up. She walked up to where Damon was standing and stood beside him with a look of shock on her face. "Damon, you can't do that to me," she said, her voice raising with every word. Damon's smile vanished as soon as it came onto his face and I found it scary. He held her by her neck and slammed her against the wall in an instant. Lola instinctively took a step back and made herself smaller, which made me wonder why they follow someone that disrespected them too much. Even though Adrian did not like me when I entered Crescent Moon Pack, he never raised his hands at me. As much as everyone complained about him being aloof and proud, they didn't fear him like this, which made me wondered why they still followed him despite all his wrongdoings. "What did I tell you about knowing your place?" He spat in her face and I watched the way fear came over her face. She scratched at his hands that were around her throat, but he did not let go. He tightened it further, almost cutting off her supply of air. Damon, she spluttered as she kept clawing at his hands and arms. You'll know your place and respect me, he snarled in her face, his voice wavering between his normal voice and a deeper one. I did not need to see his face before I knew that his wolf was trying to take control. The only reason you're still alive is that you can't even make me feel good because you're a whore and you want to dictate what to do to me. He growled at her and I shuddered where I was. Dear goddess! How did all of these people ended up following such a vile and cause person? Do not speak until you're spoken to. Do not look at me until you're ordered to. You'll not be around me unless I summon you, is that clear? He asked, to which she hurriedly nodded her head. He retracted his hands and she fell to the floor, coughing violently. My heart was beating rapidly in my chest as I watched the scene. If he could do something so terrible to his mate, he wouldn't hesitate to do worse to me if I pissed him off. We've been chained up for how long now and you think he wouldn't do worse? He's a beast that deserves to rot in the deepest part of hell, Jasmine said in my head, and I totally agreed. I looked towards Faye and my heart reached out to her. No one should be treated like that by their mate. If only I wasn't put in a position where I have to tread carefully to execute my plans to save my world, I'd have damned all consequences and said something, but like a coward, I kept quiet and watched. He turned towards me with a creepy smile on his face and squatted in front of me. I instinctively moved back and he smirked. That psycho definitely gets some kind of high from being feared by people. Did you just realize that? We would be living happily with our mate if his family did not have the knack for being feared, Jasmine sassied in my head, and I almost rolled my eyes at her. He put forward his hand and moved my hair out of my face. It took all of my willpower to not flinch back from his touch. He smiled in satisfaction when he noticed that I wasn't pulling back from his touch. Good girl, he cooed, we won't have any problems if you're submissive and do whatever I say, he spoke, his hands leaving my face and roaming about my body. He roughly grabbed me as he practically raped me. I felt disgusted with myself, but I knew that I have to put up with it if I was going to make it out of there alive. He stood up after he was gone assaulting me, and he had the guts to smile down at me. You'll be unchained and clothed in a while, we can then discuss your terms and conditions, he said with an air of authority. He turned towards Lola that had been silently watching the whole scene. Get her clothes that befits a queen. With that he left the room. Faye looked at me with a tear-stained face before leaving the room quietly, Lola following behind her. I sighed when they finally left the room. After some moments, Lola came back into the room, followed by a buff guy that had a set of keys with him. He did not spare me any glance before he unlocked the chain that held my hands together. After unlocking the chains, he stepped out without saying a word. I gently massaged my strained arms and almost cried with relief. Lola threw some clothes at me begrudgingly and crossed her arms over her chest. Dress up, princess. You get everything dropped into your laps again, she sneered at me, to which I rolled my eyes. You don't have to be bitter about anything, Lola. We were friends before all of these, at least I considered you my friend, I said. I hope it won't take too long before you realize that this side of the war is eventually going to lose. Good will always prevail. Uncertainty passed over her features before she went back to being cold and distant. I stood up slowly, my body protesting from being in the same position for too long, and slowly put on the clothes that was brought for me. It was a simple gown that reached below my knees. "Follow me," she said, and led me out into the corridor. I have to admit that I was amazed by how magnificent the building looked when we finally walked into the well-lit area. It was sparkling, almost everything was in golden color. I did not take much in before Lola led me into a big room. "The shower is over there," she pointed to the door on the left side of the room. "New clothes will be delivered to you, make sure you clean up well like a queen," she said monotonously. His orders, not mine. She left the room after that, leaving me with my thoughts. I slowly walked to the bathroom, 1,010 things on my mind, but the one that stood out the most was my silent prayer to Selene. "Guide me, Moon Goddess." Lola's POV. I took my time cleaning my body. When I looked in the mirror before getting into the shower, I felt disgusted with my body. I remembered how he looked at me and touched me all over, and bile rose to my throat. I emptied my stomach contents, which was nothing, into the toilet bowl. I was dry heaving for almost 5 minutes while crying profusely. When I finally had the energy to stand up from where I was, I stood under the shower and turned the water to a scalding temperature. I scrubbed my body vigorously while crying. I wished I could grow out another skin to present to Adrian, because this one has been tainted by that bastard. When I no longer had the energy to scrub my skin, I stood under the shower, allowing the water to wash my shame away. I stood in front of the mirror again, hoping to feel better, but I looked and felt worse. My skin was red, my hair had lost its shiny appearance, it just fell down my back lifelessly. I couldn't bear to look at myself in the mirror anymore, so I hurriedly left the bathroom before I could have another mental breakdown. When I entered the room, I saw new sets of clothes on the bed. Merely looking at the clothes, I knew they were humiliating and degrading, and I was proven right when I finally put it on. The gown was blood red, and I would have loved it if I was actually wearing it for my mate, but I felt so angry that he somehow knew colors that fit my skin perfectly. That darn Lola. She's the only one that could tell him what I wear. The color of the dress was the only thing good about it. It was barely covering me. The top half of the dress left nothing to the imagination. Apart from the fact that it was tight-fitting, which made me almost spill out of it. It was also opened at the side, which means that my skin was on display than I would have liked. I knew he did it on purpose, because it was almost like he was trying to degrade me. My mind went to what Adrian should have done if he saw me, but I refused to let myself cry or show weakness, because it was going to leave him satisfied. A knock sounded on the door, followed by, "You should come out if you're done dressing up." I looked at the door and looked at myself in the mirror again. The urge to remove the dress and wear the gown Lola gave me initially overwhelmed me. "We have to do this for our people, Lola. I'm sorry you have to go through this, but it must be done," she said sadly in my head. The knock came again, more forcefully than the last time. "If you do not come out now, I'd come in and take you to the king regardless of the state you're in," he threatened. I sighed, put on the ridiculously high heel that was placed by the bed, and stood up just in time for the door to open and the buff guy from earlier entered. His jaw almost dropped when he saw me, his eyes raked over my body, and he licked his lips. I knew what that meant, and I was further disgusted. Adrian would have poked out the eyes of anyone that looked at me like that. Moments like this are what makes me want to give up on my plan and run back to my mate. My eyes are up here, I said with venom when he kept looking at me with hunger in his eyes. He shook his head before stepping out of the room and I followed after him. At least he was gentlemanly enough to stop staring when I pointed it out to him. We reached a large set of doors and he moved to the side and gestured towards the door. "We're here." I took a deep breath before I pushed open the door. I almost fell on my face when I entered the room because I was startled by what I saw. The door closed behind me and I jumped before I started walking to the front of the room where Damon sat. There were a lot of girls in the room and none of them wore proper clothes. I could say that I was the most clothed one in that room and no one saw anything wrong with it. I felt nauseated but I contained myself and looked away, eyes on, I was working towards. I got a lot of stares from men and looks of disdain from the women as I walked, even those that were going at it like rabbits stopped at some point and looked at me. Damon smiled widely like he had won a lottery, and I wanted to smack the smile out of his face but my life was on the line. I finally made it to where he was seated, and he stood up to greet me. He clapped once and the whole room became silent. "I'd like to announce to everyone that the moment we've been waiting for is here," he said to the crowd of men with a smile. He held out his hands and I took it because I didn't want to be rude to him in front of the crowd lest he decided to punish me for being rude. "I want you all to meet your future queen and the moon wolf we've been waiting for to fulfill our dreams. Give it up for Lola Ashton." He raised his glass into the air and loud cheers followed. Damon's POV. I felt so happy and fulfilled. The destiny I've chased for 8 years was about to be mine. If only Dad was alive to see me accomplish what he couldn't. If only he didn't doubt us or he had not been greedy, he might have been alive to see you grow into twice the man he ever was, my wolf, Asher, said in my head and I totally agreed with him. I was always quiet and reserved till I became 17. All I wanted was to be in a pack of people that loved me unconditionally. I heard stories from my nannies that were hijacked from their packs. They were all nice and loving stories. They all lived in harmony and loved each other. They always looked out for each other and parents were kind to their offsprings, which made me want to experience such. Father never had my time. Mom was just one of the many that father slept with. He let her give her to me because he felt he needed an heir and killed her off after that. He told me that I should never allow myself to get attached to anyone because it was going to be my downfall. He was always conquering packs that he thinks are small and weak because according to him, weak beings shouldn't be allowed to live free, they're supposed to be slaves to the stronger ones. Small packs that didn't want to be killed off usually changed their way of governance and followed my dad's footsteps. Most small packs were not under his control because they had a very strong alliance with the Alpha King. I loved the idea of being in love with one person for life while staying in a pack where we will be supported and loved. All of these ended when I turned 17 and went out of the pack for the first time. I was a naive and weak wolf, I had always been that way, so Dad barely made me train. I felt that was his way of showing that he cared about me. I sneaked out of our land one day and went to one of the packs hoping to get a feel of how life in the pack was, but what I met there wasn't what I expected. I wasn't welcomed at all. In fact, I was imprisoned on getting there for being a rogue. The only reason I was able to escape was because Dad had a spy in the pack that was able to get me out before I could be executed. When I got back, I was punished by Dad for a week. I was whipped and locked up with little to no food. Since then, my take on packs being nice to outsiders changed and I started following in the footsteps of my father. The problems between us started when the Moon Wolf search started. Dad wanted her for himself, but I also wanted her for myself because I wanted to be powerful enough to make those packs fall under me, especially the Alpha King's pack. I made him do all the hard work of finding out where the Moon Wolf was before I killed him off in his sleep and took over as the King of Rogues. The news of his death was spread around and everyone thought they were free until Lola became ripe enough to find a mate. When her mate turned out to be the next Alpha King, I was so glad because it meant killing two birds with one stone. I partnered with a powerful witch that was into black magic because I knew it was going to be necessary if I was going to make more soldiers that can help me take down the pack wolves. I was overjoyed when I finally had Lola to myself because it was only a matter of time before my dreams came to pass. My mind came back to the present when she reached where I was sitting in the dress I picked for her. She looked so beautiful and I planned to show off her amazing body to the whole world. It took a lot of willpower to not take her when she was in the room I kept her, but I knew she wouldn't want that kind of thing, so I decided to take things easy with her. I was surprised when she said we were only going to be together on her own terms and conditions. No woman has ever spoken up against me. My word is the law around here, so it felt nice to have someone go against me for a change. I made a toast and cheers erupted around the room. I made her sit on my lap and she stiffened. "Can we take her right now?" Asher asked in my head, but I disagreed with him. We already agreed that she's special and will be treated as such. If you need to take out your frustration on someone, Faye will be perfect for you, I told him, and he growled lowly before going silent. I noticed that she was wary of everyone that was seated in the room and pulled her tighter against me. "Don't worry, I wouldn't allow anyone to touch you," I told her, but it did nothing to ease her rigid position. "Not before I touch you." She wanted to pull away from me after what I said, but I restricted her movement. "I'd behave myself if I were you, love. You don't want to become like all these girls, do you?" I asked her quietly with the aim of threatening her into submission. She turned on my laps and looked me right in the eyes. "Can we talk now? Away from everyone." She sure has nerves. I like her. Asher approved of her and I couldn't help but agree with him. She slid off my lap and I stood up after her, leading her to one of the rooms and joined to the room. I noticed that she was wringing her hands together, something I know to be a sign of distress or nervousness. I sat down in one of the chairs in the room and stared at her, waiting for her to speak. She didn't speak, so I spoke first. "What are your terms and conditions?" I asked her. She took a deep breath before she spoke. "There'll be no form of intimacy between us until I fully become your queen. Also, you can't force me into becoming your queen. You have to earn my trust and show me that you're worthy of my love," she said. Lola's POV: he was silent after I spoke, which left me wondering if I had passed my boundary and would be executed with immediate effect, but I steadied my breathing and refused to let my chin and shoulders drop. He looked me in the eyes and I returned the staring. I refused to be intimidated by him. "I knew I waited this long to find you for a very good reason. I wouldn't have been so invested in a woman that would just obey me without trying to question what I do or say," he said as he relaxed into the chair and smiled at me. "I can't wait to ravish you and make you mine so that we can take over the world together, but I have to comply to whatever my queen says," he retorted. I internally sighed in relief for still having my head on my neck despite going against him. It must be the moon goddess working in my favor. He made a come hither motion with his index finger and I sluggishly walked towards him. He tapped his laps and I sat on it. So tell me about yourself. I should know my queen more, don't you think? He asked while tightening his arms around me, which made my skin crawl, but I refrained from flinching from him. There's not much to say about me, but I'd like to ask a question though, I said, and he nodded. That room that we were in before, I pointed towards the room. Why were those girls practically naked? I noticed that humans were there too. Do they know about our existence? I asked him and he chuckled. You didn't have something like that in your old pack? He asked and I shook my head. What do your males do for fun then? He asked and I felt my blood boil. Making women parade is his definition of fun? This bastard reserved to rot in the deepest pit of hell. I wished I could end him right there and then, but I needed some informations before I could do such. I asked a question, love. His voice brought me out of my thoughts. I don't know what they do for fun, I told him. Well, those girls outside are for the satisfaction of the men present, he said with pride. I hoped to the moon goddess that my face wasn't showing how much disgust I felt. But why are humans there? They're not supposed to know about our world, right? I asked him. He laughed before he spoke again. My love, in the new world we'll be ruling over, only two things mattered. He stared at me after he said that sentence. I expected him to continue, but he didn't, so I probed further. And what exactly could the two things be? Power and riches, he said and leaned his back into the chair, giving me some space to breathe freely, which I was grateful for. I don't get it, I told him. The humans out there are very influential people that want to get a good lay, and it's not news that werewolves have better genes than the average human. Do they come here to get good from our women while we build connections in important sectors in the society? Financial sector, political sector, defense sector, and many more of those important areas that make a country, he explained, and I had only one thing that came to mind. He's unhinged. So you're telling me that that's how it's going to be when we start ruling? The ladies will be sold for influence while we benefit from it. What happens to ladies that can't be sold? What role will the men play? What if someone finds their soulmate, will they be able to be together? I fired at him rapidly, my emotions almost getting the best of me. First off, men are created to enjoy and be pleased, he said, and I almost exploded, but I somehow kept my cool. And there's nothing like soulmates. If there was, you wouldn't be here right now, Faye will be. Females that can't be sold will be slaves to the pack. The few lucky ones like you will be able to dine with kings and influential people. This is why you should agree to be my queen. I wouldn't let anyone hurt or harm you, he said, his voice becoming soft towards the end. He's crazy. Are you sure we still want to go through with this plan? Jasmine asked in my head, and I sighed internally. I'm really starting to rethink the whole plan, Jas. It gets worse every time I hear him talk. How can one person be so heartless and crazy? I said to Jasmine. Can I go to sleep? I asked him. You don't like my company? Did I do something wrong? He asked, and I shook my head with a smile that I hoped seemed real to him. No, not at all. I'd just like to rest properly since I got here, I said as softly as I could, and he nodded. I suddenly remembered that I had no idea how long I had been kidnapped for, so I asked. How long has it been since I got here? I asked him. 3 days, my love, he replied. 3 days of not being Adrian nor my friends and Rose. I felt shattered because I knew that they would be very worried about me. I'd get someone to take you to the room you'd be till you become mine, he grinned, and I managed to smile even though it hurts me to smile with the enemy. A knock sounded on the door and I stood up. He followed after and opened the door where the buff guy from before stood. He bowed his head when he saw both of us. Take her to the room adjacent to mine, he ordered, and Buff nodded. He turned and I followed after him. We were almost out of sight when he called out my name. Lola, I turned to look at him, my eyebrows raised in question. Don't play with me, he said before going back into the room where he was. My legs almost gave out from under me, but I maintained my posture as we left. Does he know? Lola's POV buff led me to a room and stood back while I stood in front of it. This is the room? I asked him and he jerked out of the reverie he was in. He licked his lips and looked up from my legs before nodding his head. I didn't spare him another look before I closed the door and went into the room, slamming the door closed behind me. I walked into the large room and fell face down onto the bed. Tears threatened to fall, but I held it in. Being a crybaby won't solve anything, but being a chronic thinker and coming up with ideas will solve a lot. I sat up, removed shoes and massaged my legs. Every part of my body hurt, and I mean every part of my body. I stood up to lock the door behind me because I didn't want Psycho to enter when I sleep off. I took off the piece of clothing I was wearing and fell asleep thinking about how the world would have been a better place to live if there weren't scum like Damon. The next morning, I was awake before the sun and laid down thinking about my mate. I lightly touched my mark and tears filled my eyes. I knew something was wrong with Adrian, but I couldn't be there for him. Rose has probably gone into depression again, leaving Lila and Avianca to take care of her. Talking about Avianca and Lila, will I ever see them again? Lila will be due in a month or two and I might not even see her nor the baby. I was still in my thoughts when a rough knock sounded at the door. Who's there? I snapped at whoever was at the door, but the incessant knocking continued. Whoever was at the door was definitely a bastard with no etiquette. I stood up begrudgingly, wrapped the duvet around myself and walked to the door. Buff was about to knock again when I opened the door. I looked at him with an eyebrow raised while rage filled me. Is everyone mannerless around here? I asked angrily and he looked at me confused. Didn't your mama ever tell you that it's rude to keep knocking at someone's door and when asked a question, you should answer? I crossed my hands over my chest, partly because I was angry and also to keep the duvet in place. He rolled his eyes at me, making me scoff. What I said about him being a gentleman, he's just like every other dog in this place. Will you talk or will you keep staring at me? I asked him. I could look at you all day long, but that would mean I'd keep my king waiting, he said with a smirk which made his already scary-looking face scarier. What do you want? My anger was over the roof now. He chuckled at my probably red face before he spoke. My king wants to see you, he finally said. Well, you can see that I am not wearing clothes. His eyes trailed down my body at that. My eyes are up here, I snapped at him and he smiled lazily before he trailed his eyes to meet mine. He said you should be brought to him immediately, he said sternly. I'd leave this room without proper clothes. Tell him that I'm not dressed and I won't be leaving this room until I am clad in befitting clothes, I told him with my shoulders squared and chin raised. He looked at me in disbelief, but I refused to back down. If I'd be going to see him, I should be properly dressed. When it looked like he wasn't going to say anything more, I entered the room and slammed it in his face. I waited with my ears to the door, and it wasn't until I heard his footsteps fade that I sighed in relief. A moment later, I heard another knock on the door, but it was different from the way Buff would have knocked. "Can you stop calling him Buff?" Jasmine asked irritatedly in my head. "Maybe you should tell me another name I can call him since you're so smart," I answered back with the same energy, and she kept quiet. That was what I thought. I opened the door and Faye stood outside my door with a bag in her hand. She was dressed scantily, and that made me wonder if she was part of the girls that were used in exchange for X. She held up the bag and I stepped aside so she could enter. "I hope you know that I hate you and I'd rather be anywhere but here," she said as she dropped the bag on the bed and gave me a death glare. "Why are you here then?" I questioned her, knowing fully well that she has to answer if her king calls her. "I happened to be pleasuring my mate when your highness gave the message that you wouldn't budge until you're properly clothed, so I was asked to bring some proper clothes to you," she said. I was amazed she was actually talking to me without pulling my hair or trying to choke me. I took the clothes out of the bag and sent a thankful look her way, to which she rolled her eyes. "Why are you with him? You do realize he's an evil person, right?" I asked her as I went into the bathroom to freshen up. "He's my mate," she answered monotonously, but I refused to believe her. When I came out of the bathroom, she was still in the room. As I put on the gown she brought for me, she spoke, "I hope you have a foolproof plan that will get us out of this mess," she said, and I looked at her in shock. "What are you talking about?" I asked her cautiously. "Look, I know you're the Moon Wolf. Lodena couldn't have overpowered you like that. You need to get out of here and save us all, or we'll be doomed if he takes over the wolf world. I'll take being mated to him as punishment from the moon goddess for trying to hurt you and cover what's not mine." She walked towards me and held my hand in hers, a vulnerable look in her eyes. "You're our only hope, Lola. I'm counting on you, and every other woman being forced to do what they do not want to do in here is counting on you also. I'll gladly help in any way I can," she said with utmost sincerity. I was shocked and confused. Can I really trust her? Faye's POV. Lola looked at me like I had gone crazy, and I couldn't blame her. I'd been a bitch to her because all I wanted was for Adrian to be mine. I couldn't deny the fact that I had been power-hungry. I wanted to know what it felt like to be in the position of power where no one would have questioned my authority. I wanted to be untouchable, and what other way to achieve that than being the queen of all wolves? I was so happy when Alpha Jaden finally picked me to be Adrian's chosen mate. Not like I gave any other person a chance. I had been so blinded by power that I forgot the most important thing: respect. I wished I had just accepted the fact that I wasn't meant to be the Queen Luna after Adrian found his mate, but instead I was blinded by rage and jealousy. Now, I have to deal with being mated to the most unhinged man in the universe. When he took me from Crescent Moon Pack, I was glad I finally met my mate, who also happened to be a feared and powerful person in the wolf world. I thought I was going to be loved and cherished just because he was my mate, but he ended up being a beast to me also. "Look, I know it's hard to believe that I actually want to get out of here or save our world, but I want to," I pleaded with her with my eyes, but she still looked wary and skeptical. I wanted to speak again, but she placed her hand on my lips to prevent me from speaking. "Someone is outside," she whispered, and I nodded my head. "We'll talk about this later," she whispered again before she finished dressing up. We walked out, and of course, the buff guy that's always around was outside. Thank goddess she detected that he was there before I could speak further. He looked at me suspiciously when I got out, which left me wondering if he had heard something before Lola could notice that he was there. "Where is he?" Lola asked me once we were outside. She looked at me intently and I got the memo. I reverted back to my peashy self and led the way to where Damon was waiting for her. The guy followed behind us, which did not give us the chance to talk again. Damon's eyes lit up when he saw her, something that he doesn't do when he sees me. He stood up to acknowledge her and I felt my heart breaking. I shouldn't be hung up on someone that doesn't give two F about me, but I couldn't help the mate bond that was between us. He pulled her into a hug and her body stiffened, but he didn't seem to mind. He waved at me to dismiss me, but she told me to wait. "What do you need her for, love?" he asked her gently, and I couldn't keep my shock off my face. He was never gentle with me, in the way he talked, the way he looked at me. He was never gentle, and he was treating another man's mate like a gem. I wanted to hate Lola, but I knew she wasn't the cause of my predicament. He was just a heartless dog. "I'd need a personal maid and I want her to wait on me," she said, and he didn't think twice before he ordered that I become a personal maid. I was dismissed after that and went out of the room, crying and feeling bad for my life decisions. If only I hadn't been covetous. Lola's POV. I looked at the door through which Faye left for a long time before Damon's voice brought me out of my thoughts. "Why her though? I heard she was a bitch to you and almost stole your mate at your former pack. Why would you want such a person around you?" He led me towards a chair, and that was when I fully noticed that we were in the dining area. He pulled out a chair for me, and I'd have been convinced that he was humane if he had not treated his mate like trash in front of me. I was so hungry, I forgot what he asked me about until he reminded me. "Oh, that. Payback is a bitch, and I just wanted to show her that she lost both men. Also, she was mean and I get to order her around without feeling remorseful," I said nonchalantly on the outside, even though I felt like strangling him on the inside. I ate to my heart content, not caring if I seemed like a pig to him. I had been starved for goddess knows how long. After eating, he was the first to speak. "I know you reached your full potential before I kidnapped you. I need your powers to build my army, and I don't want to waste any more time in doing so," he said, and I was at a loss for words. "Jas, what do I do?" I screamed internally. I was freaking out and had no idea how to reply to him because I definitely wasn't helping him. "I have no idea what to say to him, Lola. I'm not a smart ass," she said, and I almost face-palmed. "Jasmine, now is not the time to be petty about what I said to you," I tried persuading her, but she just went silent. "What is your utmost power?" he asked with glee. "I've always wanted to know why Alicia said I have to wait till you reach your potential before I could take you," he said, and I got confused. "Joke's on you, because I'd also like to know what my full potential is." "Alicia? Who is Alicia?" I asked instead, since I had nothing to tell him. I was about to speak again when a gust of wind began to blow in the room and a woman whose face was covered by a veil emerged out of the air. Talk about dramatic entrance! She removed her veil and I was shocked by what I saw in front of me. Serena? I asked as she walked majestically towards me. One, just how many moles were in Crescent Moon Pack? Lola's POV. She chuckled and took a seat beside me after bowing lightly to Damon. Serena, what are you doing here? I asked again. She placed a hand on my shoulder and I shook it off. I'd really love to not be touched by a two-faced peach. She sat back in her seat with grace and chuckled again before replying to me. I see you've met my loving sister, Serena, she said before sipping from a cup of wine that had magically appeared in front of her. I stared at her in disbelief as I could not believe that they could be different people. She laughed out loud before dropping her wine cup and looking at me again. I know you might not believe me, but I am Alicia, not Serena, she said with a smile that was similar to Serena's, but the aura around her was dark and evil. While Serena barely spoke and less spoken to, the woman in front of me made it obvious that she was an attention whore. Serena loved simple attires that made her look gorgeous without putting so much effort. This woman was clad in expensive-looking dresses and had on jewelry that were probably worth my whole life. She tapped my nose lightly like she would a baby before standing up, draping her coat over the back of the chair. She walked slowly around the room before stopping suddenly and looking at me. If anyone had mistaken me for that peach, I'd have had their head on a plate, but I'll give you the benefit of being close with Damon and spare you, she said with her head raised in pride, and it took a lot of effort not to laugh at her pathetic display at being powerful. Jasmine was laughing maniacally in my head and I almost did too. I am the most powerful witch in the land, Alicia. She created another gust of wind in the room, but I wasn't impressed. I believed that the only powers she has comes from the black magic she uses. She'd probably be nothing without them. Why is she here? I asked Damon, who looked strangely fascinated by her. He was so focused on the gibberish she was saying, like they were the best words that have ever been said in the history of words. You keep forgetting that they're both individuals. One thinks the whole world belongs to him, the other thinks everyone is below her. I'm even surprised you thought they'd be different, Jasmine said in my head, and she was right. When Damon finally broke out of his trance, he looked at me to answer the question I asked him. She'll be the one to use your powers to enhance my soldiers, just the way the first king of rogues did, he said like I was supposed to know. I already told you before and I'll be saying it again. I'm not helping you until I find you trustworthy, I said with as much confidence as I could muster, but I was so nervous on the inside. What if he sees through my mask and knows that I'm not lying? What if Alicia could tell that I haven't reached my potential? Serena knew, but I wasn't sure if Alicia had the power to know that also. Damon's eyes started changing colors and I thought he was going to lose it and that would be the end of me, but Alicia spoke up. Now, Damon, she cooed like she was talking to a child, and Damon relaxed. That's new. I've told you several times that you can't get what you want by force every time, she scolded him, and he was actually listening to her. I guess some kind of sorcery was involved. The young lady said you need to earn her trust, and we both know that if we take her blood against her will, it won't work the way it's supposed to, she said, and I internally sighed in relief. That would definitely give me more time to plan my escape from this god-forsaken pack. I stood up, gaining both of their attention. I'd like to take my leave. I see I have no business here till further notice. Without waiting for them to say anything, I walked towards the door. I was almost out of the door when Olivia spoke. It was nice meeting you, Lola. We'd have so much fun together. See you around. I turned to her with my hand still on the doorknob. She smiled sinisterly, which sent shivers through my spine. I hurriedly left the room and closed the door behind me. I walked briskly away from them and did not stop till I reached my room where Buff was safeguarding. I totally ignored him and went into my room. I was startled when I saw the figure that was sitting on my bed. I only relaxed when I saw that it was Faye. She wasn't scantily dressed anymore. I was somehow glad that I managed to help her escape being sold for money. It must hurt badly, especially coming from your mate. I see you're wearing more clothes, I teased her, and she rolled her eyes at me. Thank you, she said quietly, and I nodded my head. At least she got the memo of what I was trying to do for her. I sat on the bed beside her and she turned to face me. I have something to tell you, she said nervously, making me sit up to hear what she had to say. Go on, I'm listening, I urged her. I heard some of the high-ranking wolves talking about you when I went to change my attire, she said, keeping me in suspense. Me? I asked in disbelief. I don't get it. I've only been here for a few days and something is already being said about me. I asked her again and she nodded. You wouldn't be the queen of the wolf world even after all pack wolves are conquered, she said. It wasn't like I was actually interested in leading the wolves that would conquer my people if I don't act fast, but I was still curious. And why is that? I asked her warily. Olivia will take you out of her way, she said, and I was more confused. Rumors have been going on that Olivia said she'd be the queen of the wolf world after the war. You need to get out of here as fast as you can, Lola, Faye said with urgency in her voice. Lola's POV. I looked at Faye in astonishment, and it did not take me long to connect the dots that it might actually be true. The looks she gave me, the subtle touches with Damon, the words as I left the room all added up, and that was when I realized that I might actually be in danger. But I was starting to mistrust Faye. When she said she wanted to help me, it coincided with the same time Damon asked about my powers, and I felt that she was on the same side as him and I was the bait in the whole situation. I swear on my life, Lola, she whispered with tears in her eyes, I'm not in cohorts with anyone. I'm only doing this because I realized how we're all going to be if Damon takes over the world, she said. I didn't know what to say, so I kept mute and kept looking at her. I know how life was in Crescent Moon Pack, and I've seen the way people are treated here, especially the women, she said. You were right. I was so blinded by power that I forgot the most important thing in our world. Respect. The people respected you, and that triumphed over my reputation. She was tearing up at this point, and I could feel my uncertainties floating away. Maybe, just maybe, we can trust her, Jasmine said in my head. I do not get any form of negative energy from her. Before I spoke, I listened for Buff's heartbeat, and sure enough, he hadn't left the door. Sometimes, I wonder if he does anything else other than staying outside my room. Listen, Faye, I have no idea as to how I'm going to get out of here, I whispered, and she looked at me like I had a loose screw in my head. You just allowed yourself to be kidnapped without a plan. She yelled. Firstly, I need to know what Damon is up to. I need to know how they are going to wage war against pack wolves. I need to know how my powers are going to come into play. Without all of these, I cannot get out of this pack, I said. I turned to look her directly in the eyes before I spoke. If you really want to help me, this is where you come in. She looked at me expectantly and waited for me to talk. I need you to bring me a map of the whole building, the location of this place and how strong the security is, I said. I'd need a clear roadmap of the place before any other escape plans are made, I told her. How long have I been here for? I asked her. I think you were unconscious for about 2 days before you finally woke up, and you've been awake for 3 days, so you've been awake for 5 days, she said. Wow, 5 days of being away from my mate and pack, it feel like a lifetime already. I need you to find out something for me, I told her. I'd do anything to prove my loyalty to you, she replied. I pulled her closer and whispered into her ears. Hours passed and I was still waiting for her to come back, but when the door opened, it was Alicia that came in. She smiled at me wickedly before she came to sit beside me on the bed. I didn't like her aura at all, so I moved back from her. I see that Damon has really taken to you. It's nice to see that he actually has a soft spot for someone, but I hope that you know you're not getting out of this alive. She asked with a creepy grin on her face, and I stared at her. I guess Faye was right after all. She was crazy, very crazy. What are you talking about? I asked, even though I knew what she was talking about, and she laughed maniacally. I do not know what she sees in herself. She definitely wasn't anything that he thought she was. She took a seat and patted my cheeks, to which I slapped her hands off my skin. She made my skin crawl. You know fully well that you're not going to get out of this alive, don't you? I'm sure you've been told that Damon is mine and mine alone, and when he conquers all of your stupid packs, I'm going to be the queen and rule alongside him, she said like it was the best thing in the world. I looked at her in shock and I just couldn't believe my ears. I feel bad for not believing Faye initially. It was at that point that I promised myself that I wasn't going to allow these two psychos to take over our world and turn my people into objects of getting riches for themselves. I was expecting her to say something about my powers, that she knew I had not reached my full potential yet, but she did not say anything, so I knew I was right. She definitely didn't have any other powers apart from a black magic. I guess Serena got all the powers of the family, I said to her just to get a reaction, and she fell into my trap. Do you have any other powers save the black magic you use? I asked her, and she looked at me with rage in her eyes. What are you talking about, you stupid peesh? Just because you're the moon wolf doesn't mean you know all these things, she raged, but I wasn't moved. Seeing as she was getting enraged, I knew that I was hitting a nerve. Why do you hate your sister so much? Oh, I get it, she's so much better than you'll ever be. I mean, if we take away the black magic, I'm pretty sure you won't have anything to yourself. She looked like she was ready to strangle me, but she was holding back. Listen to me here, Peesh. I'm going to be the queen of the wolf world after your world has been conquered. You can't go around telling Damon this, or I'll make sure you die painfully. She stood up and left my room. After she left, I was still staring at the door. Great, I thought I was only going to deal with just one psycho, but now I have two on my hands. Just what are you doing to me, Moon Goddess? Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates. link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.